to be director, Pokemon director, and also writing, so many chapters. Lots of episodes have gone by with Geodude, Charmander, and Psyduck, and they were voiced by this guy. He is my guest on this Kirblog. How'd I do? Not bad? You like?
Yeah, we'll call you. No, it sounded great. It sounded great. I'm stunned. I'm stunned into silence.
Never gonna work in this town again. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Pokecember of 2018. I've had some very cool guests on my channel in general, and certainly
but
for
this guy isn't one of
not this. No, unfortunately not. No, I am. This is a very rare treat for me and for all of you, because there's very rare interviews with this gentleman that's joining me today, and I'm very happy to be in his presence. He more recently he was very heavily involved in some of the newer incarnations of the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. If you guys are watching those on whatever channel Yu-Gi-Oh is on today, I have no idea. Way back in the day, he also worked on such classic anime series such as Slayers and the irresponsible Captain Tyler. But this man is here, my guest today, because in fact he was a writer, producer, voice director, and voice of many episodes of the first several seasons of Pokemon, the animated series. And, I mean, everything from Psyduck, Geodude, the Hitmones, Charmander, Blaine, the gym leader, just so many. And, he worked on several of the movies, like an insurmountable amount of stuff. And I'm very happy to have him. Please welcome, everybody, Michael J. Haigney. Hello, sir.
Wow, I think we lost everybody during that, but yeah, hi, Chris. It's good to talk to you, and I want to say two things. First of all, I'm not saying it's rare treat because of me, but it's rare because I don't remember ever having given had a conversation with anybody in any media about Pokemon or the other shows. So it's rare in that sense. And the one thing I wanted to say is I worked we had a company with a partner of mine, Larry Juris, and it was Taj Productions. And at Taj, they did the irrepressible, irreplaceable, irrefutable, unsinkable Captain Tyler. But I was never involved with that. That was a total Jim Malone deal.
Okay.
So it was going on in the company, but I don't think I've even ever seen an episode of it. We were very busy, so we didn't watch a lot of other shows.
Well, that's okay. We're not here to talk about that stuff. We're here to talk about mostly the Pokemon
but I know
stuff
that
anyway.
Someone will attack me on the street saying, you didn't have anything to do with that. Why would you
No, well, they'll attack me for spreading misinformation, so don't you worry about a dang old thing.
I don't want to take, I don't know if it's credit or blame, but I don't know. So anyway, but that's
No problem at all. Well, actually, that's a great segue, because, I mean, you've been in the entertainment business, as it were, for a very long time. And I guess just to bust the kind of generic stuff out of the way, how did you get your start in the wacky world of entertainment and cartoons and voiceover and what have you?
Well, first of all, I've worked on a lot of shows. Whether those shows qualify as entertainment or not, I have to leave that up to the audience. I'm not making any claims of that. I'm just saying I worked on them. Well, okay, we only have 3 hours, so let me do the short version. I was a page at CBS, and which is like an usher, and I did that for a few years, and then I worked on. From there, I went to TV specials, live TV specials that had been done in New York City at CBS. So there were telethons and Thanksgiving Day parades and New Year's Eve shows and that kind of live events and that kind of thing. So I did that for several years. Anyway, eventually I met a guy named Norman Grossfeld when I was working at a syndicator. It was called Select Media, and we did a bunch of little interstitial things, little wraparound 30-second shows that were wrapped around a commercial. And then we eventually did some syndicated shows. A few of you may remember we did 3 2-hour specials called the Horror Hall of Fame, and the first one, and then 2 and 3. With the host was Robert Englund, who was Freddy Krueger in the movies, in the Night Elm Street movies. And then we did a late night music show on Fox, and we did a bunch of things. And after that, I did some other things. But now moving into the Pokemon time, because we had done a show. It was a competition sports show. It was kind of at the time when American Gladiator. I don't know if anybody listening remembers that show, but it was like a muscle man and muscle woman competition show, and we did one at this syndicator because at that time rollerblading, inline skating more properly, was coming was kind of in vogue then. So it was a competition on skates. It was called Blade Warriors, and we shot all the games out at the Barker Hangar out in Santa Monica, and then we posted everything. We did all the announcing of the events in New York. So I wrote sort of the ad libs, so to speak. I would write the stuff that Jim Davidson, who went on to do some shows and stuff. I wonder where Jim is. Hi, Jim, if you're listening. Unlikely, but anyway. Oh, I don't know if it's likely. So anyway, I met Norman was working at the syndicator on another show. So I had done the ad libs for the sporting show, and a guy I knew said, "Hey, this was Larry." I said, "Hey, I usually do music, but they already have the show. But this they want on cartoons, but they want to change the audio on this. Do you think you could do that? Because they're kind of doing that for this other show." I said, "Yeah, I'll take a look at it. What is it?" He says, "It's a Japanese anime movie called Gall Force." And it was girls in space doing things. So I said, "Oh, yeah, I can take a look and see if I can do it." And so I kind of learned and figured out how to, do the time codes and try to match the lip flap, as we call it. And so that seemed to go okay. And then he got another job, which was Slayers. And that was the first anime series that I worked on, adapting it. And then we hired the actors, and Lisa Ortiz, who I'm sure you've spoken to, was on that show. She was Lena Inverse. And we had a lot of other people that eventually wound up working with on various series. And so Norman knew of this, and Norman was at 4Kids. And they were a licensing company and a lot of toy brands and stuff. And he called me and he said, "Hey, we're doing this series, a Japanese series called the Pokemon." I said, Is that the one where the kids went to the hospital?" And they go, "Remember, sent the kids to the hospital because it was all over the news." I don't know. Maybe you're too young to remember, but
No. Listen. Let me cut in and say, no. That was every kid knew about that because I'll tell you exactly why. Because every kid heard about. Dude, there was a Porygon episode that they cut, and it never came to America because it gave a bunch of kids in Japan seizures or something. Every 10-year-old, I swear to God, knew that story. They knew about all, and the one there was a guy with a pistol that was cut. Some other episode I think that never made it over here at one point.
Right, true.
So that was well. Once the show came out, kids found out about that stuff. Absolutely, yes. But
that's of course the only that's the one episode they all wanted to see, and that's the one that they didn't see. And I don't know. And during our conversation, I'm going to be asking you, I think, to tell me because I either can't remember, misremember, or never knew the answer to a lot of the things that we're probably going to discuss.
Well, I hope we'll solve some mysteries together by the end of this.
But anyway, that was it. And so just to add one little thing, I said, "Is that the one that sent the kids to the hospital?" He said, "Yeah, but we're not going to show that one." So anyway, we looked at it, and I have to say that Larry and I, my partner in TAJ, we thought, wow, I don't know. This is great that we're getting a series that was going to be on. But, we looked at a couple of episodes, and I thought, I don't remember what Larry's was. I said, I don't know, maybe 13 episodes. I don't, it seems crazy. It's like these little, critters. And I just didn't. But anyway, so then that's how it started because I had worked with Norman and I had done some anime there, but just completely by accident. I from one job to the next was completely accidental.
Mm-hmm. So I guess actually, by the way, it's very funny that you bring up Norman. I'm glad you did because I was going to talk about him as well when we get to some stuff about the movies and the commentaries that you guys used to do. But so I guess okay. Well, I'm not surprised to hear just from one job to the next because that's how so many of these things start. But so I remember, and I guess I'm also setting you up so that you hopefully remember some of these things. I remember that when it started. It was in syndication. I believe it was before WB was like, "Yo, we want this. This is going to be our thing." It was just on syndicated TV. It was the first 60-something episodes. So you guys started off with a whole lot of stuff. And I'm curious about what some of those early days were like because I've heard somebody had once told me that there were other companies that were looking at it, and someone even went so far as to say, yeah, and if 4Kids didn't get it, it may have just been another obscure anime show sitting on the shelf of like, you know, a specialty video store and never became the mega hit on TV that it was. And in no small part to the work that you guys did on it in terms of like adapting it and everything. But I gotta know, because I mean, it must have been such a different beast with like not only working on, you know, an anime, but also like working with a titan like Nintendo, you know, in terms of collaborating with like name consistencies and terminology and, you know, distribution, tie-ins, all these different things. The early days of when you guys were first starting, whatever you can remember from 21 years ago, what was that time like for all of you guys?
Okay, so the thing is, you know, each group, there were a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people were involved with the show, and the success of the show, and the success of all Pokemon is there's, you know, now I'm an older guy. I get into the same phrase. I always say there are three things that make it successful, and nobody knows what they are. And that's kind of, I think, the way Pokemon is. I mean, kids love to collect things. So, but anyway, I'm sort of coming around to saying everything was kind of compartmentalized, not necessarily by design, but, you know, I was working on adapting the scripts and hiring the actors and directing the shows. Okay? So at the very beginning, I remember that I believe that Norman and I worked together, I think, on at least the first episode. But of course, he was extremely busy too. It wasn't that he didn't want to. But that's my recollection. Another recollection that I have of Norman telling us early on was, I think before he had seen a lot of the episodes, one thing that I remember he mentioned, which made my blood run cold, was he said, you know, we have all these episodes, but we may want to combine episodes.
Ooh.
We may want to take, like, you know, I think he was thinking, well, maybe it was a slower path. I don't know exactly. I never had a long conversation with him about it. But he said, you know, we may want to take pieces from episodes and kind of construct new stories and things. And I think that was very early on when neither of us had seen any adaptation of it. I don't even know if he had seen translations. But anyway, he would send me translations. He had someone working for him. Oh my gosh, he was a very, very nice guy, and I'm trying to remember his name, and it's going to come to me later on. I hate to start naming people because I'm going to forget some people, and I don't want to do that. But anyway,
well, to cut in for a second, you did mention Jim Malone, who was one of the other like major voice directors in the early days, and he was all.
Yes.
I know he did Slayers with you guys. It's so funny too because, by the way, I did not grow up with Slayers. I did watch it way later on because Funimation picked up the license and put up a bunch of them, and it was so surreal to me because watching it, like, you know, 10, 15 years after you guys did it, it was like this weird time capsule because it was all of the Pokemon guys, all of those actors, and it was the same kind of like, you know, like the audio quality, the sound effects, the music, same kind of like, you know, that old 90s kind of like the film grunge kind of like, you know, footage and stuff. And it was like this time capsule, almost like I was watching some old episodes of Pokemon, hearing like Lisa and Veronica, Eric, Rachel, all those guys. And it was cool in that way, and it's a fun show as well. I really enjoyed it, but it was so bizarre to me. Oh yeah, this was before that. Like, God, that's so insane to me.
I guess it was sort of like a stock company. You know, when we started casting for Pokemon, we went with people whom we knew and whom we knew could do it, or we felt could do it, and on whom we knew we could depend, because, you know, we would have some people who would do things for a little while, and that happened in the early days of Pokemon too. As you probably know, we started out with some actors, and a couple of them got other jobs, and then we replaced them with people. And so we you know, we never knew when a person was going to get a big role or want to move to the West Coast or whatever. But we tried to go with people whom we kind of thought they had roots in New York, and we knew. We had worked with them before, and we knew we could depend on them for the long or the long-ish haul. But again, I hasten to add, I didn't ever think that Pokemon would still be going I don't know, what is it, 20 years, 25 years?
Yeah, 20, 21 or 22 years now. Well,
Right,
because
I think they had the 20th last year or something.
yeah, I mean, just recently in theaters, the 21st movie was just coming out
Oh
over
my
here. Yeah,
gosh.
yeah, far cry from Mewtwo, but
But just getting back to your, original
yeah.
thing, what was it like? I mean, we were working at a studio in Midtown Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a few engineers that would come in, and then we started settling on a couple of them. Dante was one, and Ron London was another one who stayed, and then eventually came over to Four Kids, from the studio there. But we were doing it through Taj. So Norman had hired Taj, myself and Larry, and Jim Malone too, to basically supply the show. And Kathy Borland was the producer, so we would supply the shows to her. We at the beginning, and I don't remember when we started production or when the premiere is. I'm sorry. I'm sure someone will text you and whatever. But we were working. We were trying to really pump the shows out, and I would be simultaneously adapting the scripts, asking questions from Paul. Oh, I can't remember his last name. Paul, like, what does this mean? Because there were always translation things that didn't exactly, there would be like Ash would kneel on a pillow or something. What did that mean in Japanese? That was an episode too. But that kind of thing. So we were auditioning, and we were adapting, and then trying to get the episodes to Kathy and then on the air. I don't remember what the time frame was, but we were continuously working on it. It wasn't that like, we'd work for a few weeks and then we'd stop. It was just the flow of the translations that would the only thing that would change our schedule. But it flowed pretty well.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning, as I remember it, I think there were a couple of gaps, but it wasn't much, and we just kept working and working and working, and it was, so a lot of it is like a blur,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, I mean, like, with I think like 60-something episodes straight up. I mean, that's so rare for any show. So I can imagine it was just like, all right, here's a whole bunch of stuff, ready, go.
Right, and see, they had already aired in Japan, I believe.
Yeah.
I think we were 1 year behind them, or I don't remember now. I don't remember if they, a lot of this stuff I never knew. Like, for example, I don't know if they did 30 episodes and then stopped, or did 20 and then 20 and 20. I don't know. We would just get the episode. I would just know. I think we always had the videotapes, but we would always be, the translations. It took a while, it's like anything. Mm-hmm. But I believe I believe the Japanese always, were ahead of us.
Right.
Substantial.
Well, here's a little bit of a nerdy thing, because so Veronica has talked about this at some convention panels before, and again, this is going back to the.
I've never been to one. I'm afraid to go.
You should. I think you'd be a blast. They're a lot of fun.
Or someone would try to blast me. I know. I know. I have a lot of. Well, anyway, we can get
man, all you got to do is do Charmander, and they'll love you immediately.
We'll
but so on the really beginning, so Veronica has gone on record at a few different cons and talked about how two different things. That first of all, supposedly at one point, she was hired as the main character, and then was fired to be replaced with a child actor, and then was rehired shortly after that when it was like, oh, he's going to grow up and we're going to have to get another one in like a year. And also she had mentioned that apparently Ash was called other things, like multiple other things in early stages of production, and even like the first whole episode might have been like redone like multiple times. Does any of that spark any memories for you from the very beginning?
The long answer is no. Okay, here's where I put another one of my caveats in here.
All right.
She may be 100% right.
Right.
And I may be misremembering it, unremembering it, but I'm not hiding anything consciously that I know of.
Sure.
But here's the thing: I always said, I remember in later years that I would always say, people would always want, maybe we should get kids to do this. And I always said, you do not want the kids to do it, because I always knew that if you got a kid, first of all, the voice changes. Second of all, the kid could change his or her mind and decide he or she doesn't want to do it anymore. Plus, it was very hard and I don't know if I ever use. There were a couple of times that we used kids, but only for very limited things.
Yeah.
And we would audition kids because every time we came in a new series, people would say, "Why don't we try it with kids this time?" And it was like, okay. And after a while, it was like, plus they're not available. You know, you get them for a couple of hours after school, and that's it. And the thing is, if you want, especially if you wanted them in a lead role, you wouldn't be able to get the shows done. You know, and so I'm not saying I doubt that. I'm sure there was a lot. Well, I can imagine that there was a lot of dithering at the beginning because there was a lot at stake for the show. You know, with the tie-in with Nintendo, with getting it on in syndication, and it was the first. I think it was the first big, series for 4Kids. She could be right, but I don't remember her being fired. It could be that. What it could be is that we said, "Oh yeah, we like you. We're going to get," and then maybe someone at 4Kids may have said, let's test the kid. And maybe we did that. That's not in my memory, but it could be, but I don't remember that.
Okay. Well, and she also mentioned that like there was a stage at the very beginning where Ash was still going to be Satoshi, which was his Japanese name. Then he was like Alex, and then he was Casey, and then he was Ash, which may or may not have even been possibly provided as a name. Ash and Gary were used as names in the video game, so those might have even been provided by Nintendo. But those were early things.
You know, that would have been something that Norman would have just said, this is the name. I don't remember that. Because, you know, I guess the names tied in with kind of what their character, Pokemon were rock, water, and well, sort of electric, I guess.
Yeah.
So Ash was always getting burnt, so that's why he was Ash, as far as I knew. Brock it had the word rock in it, and Misty was water. So I tend to think that that makes more sense to me, but it's possible.
Yeah. Well, here's something I'm sure you'll remember. This is something I imagine. I am, because I know this brought great joy to you from when you'd always talk about it in other behind the scenes stuff. Is so often you would jump in the booth and do the voices of several of the Pokemon creatures.
This is what it was. This is how I remember it. You know, we were just getting the shows, and we knew that Norman had told us that there were like, tell me how many original Pokemon were there?
150, yeah.
Okay, 150, maybe more. That was a song. Yeah, see, Norman was very strong on the Gotta Catch 'Em All. That was Norman's, and that was a big part of.
So he came up with Gotta Catch 'Em All.
That's right.
Wow! Wow!
Yeah.
Okay.
They did this, and as far as I know, because I think they produced them separately. Although we did it's Lapras. It's, you know, we did those bunches. But it was his idea to, I don't even know if we even saw it. I guess we did, but to do the who's that Pokemon? It's whatever. And then the Poke Rap, that was totally, we didn't have anything to do with that. Maybe just dropping it into the Masters, but that was a separate thing as well. That John Siegler and the music writers did. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go back to your question. Oh yes, the Pokemon. So we knew there were 150 Pokemon, and so I think in the second episode or something, it was like, oh, here comes Charmander. So it's like, oh, you know, I don't remember what it was scheduling. So it's like, I'm just going to jump in the booth and sound like the Japanese actor sounded. Charge, you know, whatever. But we didn't know that. We thought there'd be 150 episodes. There'll be 150 Pokemon. Or I wasn't even thinking of it. But then when Charmander was in the next episode, and then there were new ones, it kept, oh, man, this isn't what I thought it was. So that's how it happened. But there was a very good byproduct for me personally on that, because I think it was the second season, or maybe even later. Maybe it was much later, during the fourth season, that I really wasn't involved with. Nintendo wanted to do a television commercial. And it was the first, I think, as far as I know, it was the first television commercial for the game. I don't remember what game it was. And they wanted all the people who did the original voices. And I was a big percentage of them. And so it was like a union job or something. And so I got residuals for a while. And then after a while, they stopped that. I don't think they ever did that again because they didn't want to pay the actors. Nobody ever wants to pay the actors. It's a terrible thing.
Well, it's funny because okay, so here's something I was going to lead into this earlier. So, by the way, to anybody listening to this, if you can possibly ever track down, like on Amazon or something, the original DVD releases of Pokemon movies 1, 3, and 4, I believe. There are some really, really entertaining commentaries by this gentleman and Norman Grossfeld, who is the producer at 4Kids.
I have never heard them.
And listen, let me tell you something. This is the other reason why this is actually really cool that I get to talk to you on this here, because I used to listen to those. I do animation as well, in addition to voiceover. I didn't mention that when we first met, but I used to listen to those commentaries all the time. Just one, because I found it interesting. In fact, actually,
Really?
I would even say that might have been a big reason that I got like interested in like voiceover as a thing in the first place. Like finding out, oh, there are people that like do this, that make this happen and everything. Like that was a major factor. But you told the story about Charmander, and forgive me because at the time, take note, I was like 15 or 16, whatever. So, I was a brat about it. But you told the story about, like we got all the other actors recorded, and then, one of the new creatures would have to make a sound. So often I would just jump in, and you said that exact same thing about Charmander. Oh, he's probably only in this one episode. And then it was Charmander for like 77 episodes or something. And my response to that was always, Ash catches him at the end of the episode.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm like, man, how could you not know that he's going to be in the rest of the series when Ash catches him and adds him to the team? Ugh, idiot, God, whatever. And then, of course,
well, I certainly won't deny that that's true. But you know what? I've thought about this a number of times, because I've seen people at conventions and stuff. I've never been at those panels for various reasons. The big one is because no one has ever asked me. But the thing is, it's very different. It's a different perspective of doing the thing and seeing the thing. Now, this seems like an obvious observation, and it is. But the thing is, that's why the fans probably, many of them, maybe even most of them, know much more about the series in certain ways than I do. Because, it's like being in a restaurant. You go in a restaurant, it's like, oh, wow, this is great, and people are serving you, and they're nice. But in the basement, it's much different, and in the kitchen, it's much different. And coming at it from that point of view, it's just two completely different experiences.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy to hear that you enjoyed the things. We did those in one shot. I only remember doing one, but I guess we did more than one. Is that right?
Yeah. In fact, actually, I'll even say, and I'm very thankful for this, on the fourth movie, which was the Celebi one.
Right. I think I only did the adaptation on that. I think Jim directed that one.
Yes, he did. Yes, because that commentary had you, Jim, and Norman, and then Veronica, Rachel, Eric, and God rest her soul, Maddie Blaustein, who was just an absolute joy to. If anything, again, guys, if you can find that one particularly, Pokemon Forever, the Celebi movie, if you can find the original DVD of that, just if anything to hear Maddie Blaustein also just being an absolute joy. Because she was so enthusiastic and into playing Meowth and loved the show. I mean, the whole thing,
That's true.
Everybody was so wonderful, and that was my first time. And now I've Veronica, I've worked with, we're in Sailor Moon, this other anime together.
She's a great person.
Yeah.
She's a lovely person, and she was always great to work with.
Yeah, and Rachel I've met a couple
Unlike,
times.
oh no, I can't say that.
I've met Eric very briefly.
I don't want to. Let me take that back. I don't. It's not that she wasn't lovely to work with. She was, but I don't want to say people were bad because I don't want to. Some people were easy. It's like anything. Some people were easier than others, and some people were more fun than others. Not always the fun people were the greatest, and not only greatest are the most fun. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I don't want to say that, but it was a great experience, and everyone really, that whole group there that you just mentioned, had a lot in common. But one thing they had in common is they always wanted to do a good job, and that's something that I would say once in a while, and I would say it especially, when we were mixing the shows or when we were in the thing, and it becomes a long day, and you've done the thing over and over again, and having adapted the show and been the person to see the show the most, in America, I had the lines. I guess they're different kind of directors. Certain directors give me something that I've never heard of. I had it because I had tried to fit those words into those mouths. At that time, we were not to my recollection, editing any of the flaps. We would cut scenes or trim scenes, or they would do that after. But because we didn't do any of the video editing at that time at Taj. But so I was really intimately familiar, and I was hearing how I thought it should be, you know? And so that was difficult, I think, for some actors because they wanted to do it a different way, in a way that I didn't think sounded right. And I think I know I frustrated them. I know actors, when I see them stage and film actors as well, they always love the directors who say, they let me do it. You know, they don't really direct. Because actors want to do what they want. Everybody wants to do what they want to do. And it's a very challenging, it's a very specific kind of work. As you, I'm sure you know, doing the ADR for these shows, because you have to fit within the confines most of the time. And it's very difficult, and Japanese is a very different language. I mean, it has different rhythms, it has different vowel endings of words that aren't always so copacetic with the English. And so it's a very challenging thing. So these people are really, you know, and that's also why, you know, you heard a lot of them in Slayers, because we wanted to have the people who we knew could do this, because the reality of it was we had tight schedules and we had a budget to work within too. You know, and we had to deliver the shows. You know, we would have people come in and they had a great voice, but they just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't that they were bad actors. It's just this specific thing, as you know, is a very specific thing. I'm not saying that it takes it's just a very specific talent to be able to act and to be able to match those mouths. And that group that you just mentioned, you know, they work all the time because they can do it well. They're good at that. So,
yeah.
You know.
It's funny what you say about people rolling their eyes at the dialogue too. This is the interesting thing. Maybe you can clarify this with me too. Somebody I worked with in New York, we actually were talking about you once because I mentioned that. I used to listen to the commentaries. Well, no. Here, well, because the person in question, I guess you know, they had worked with you, so I won't out them. But they mentioned, like, yeah, Michael writes his scripts with, like, you know, italices and underlines and, like, you know, all these very specific kind of things. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But here's the thing. First of all, I do that for my own scripts because I write and produce my own animation and stuff like that. So I totally get that. And usually everybody that I work with understands if there's a specific thing you're going for. And I think it goes to show because and this is not with any kind of, you know, because I got to work on it way, way later when it was like this. The show now, I think, is much more like, okay, we want it to be pretty close to what the Japanese dialogue is. Obviously, the character names are changed and localized and everything by Nintendo and all that. But the actual script, I think, is much more like the way that most other anime are treated now. But back then, when I think that there was a little bit more room for liberties, I mean, you know, there were a lot of, God, I can remember, like, I haven't seen this many strange letters since the last time I placed a personal ad, you know, things like that. You know, but like it was very snappy and a lot of those kind of things. And I appreciate it.
Dropped right in. Don't listen to Eric. Turn it off.
Well, you know, Carter's doing it now, which is funny. And
is he?
Yeah, he's actually been doing it for the last, like, he's been doing it longer than Eric is the funny thing.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he's Meowth as well. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, Carter goes way back because I worked with Carter with Larry. He was good friends with Larry, and they did a lot of music and stuff. And I knew that he was writing he was writing shows even when I was or adapting shows when I was at 4Kids for a long time. But after I never had contact with him. So yeah, and I know that then they moved over up to 53rd Street there, and Lisa and. I can't remember.
Tom Whalen was directing at the time.
Right. Yeah. That's when that whole thing blew up. But anyway, yeah.
Well, actually, 20 subjects ago, I was going to ask, because, I mean, obviously you got to voice so many of them, and whether it was one you played or not, I mean, I would imagine you probably had some favorites as far as the creatures went throughout your time on working on it, yeah?
I guess Charmander was fun, but, I have to give credit to Eric Stewart. Now, this also may be a false recovered memory, but this is what I remember. I remember we were recording it at a place called Buttons on I think it was 45th or 46th Street in Manhattan. That's where we did like the first season. Then we built a studio at Taj, and we did it there. But we were doing it, and I think Eric was in there, and he kind of, because now I don't remember what the Japanese original character sounded like, and I think he came up with the suggestion. Yes, but that's what I remember, but I did it. So, but again, sometimes I would, and sometimes one time Pearson was like, in episode 322, did you plug in the voice? And it's like, yeah, wow, how'd you know that? I thought it sounded great, but I thought it was undetectable, but I guess it wasn't. There was a lot of that. But wait a minute, you're edging into the area that I think some fans are very, very exercised about, which is the changing the things. I don't want to get away from that because I know people have strong feelings about that.
Well, not with Pokemon. No, that's the weird thing is believe it or not, with a lot of the other 4Kids properties, yes, that was very much a thing. And actually, to be honest, it kind of frustrates me when people still do it because all 4Kids has now is Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's just the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. So it's when people are like, yeah, man, they really screwed up this year. It's like, look, don't kick them when they're down, guys. But no, believe it or not, no, Pokemon is one of those shows where people don't rag on it. Like, people look back on the early days in those first, 8 seasons that you guys did very fondly. People love that stuff. And nobody, like, even knowing, like, oh, there was this one episode where, like, James had, like, inflatable boobs or something, and, like, yeah, but we get it. We know why that couldn't have aired. And, like they understand. But no, with Pokemon, that was the one exception, I think, with 4Kids where everybody was like, no, we get it. That's how we grew up with it. It's still the show. It's still the characters as we know them, and, like, we're fine with it. So, like, honestly, if you ever got that impression, that wasn't the case with Pokemon. Probably other shows. But I know that I remember, and I can't remember exactly where, that people were like, because I changed things in there, and I remember there were rice balls, and I made them like donuts or something. People hated that. Oh, they were always something different every time.
What was it? It was that, and I know, and you know what? I totally understand what they're talking about, and I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not, because everybody, the thing was, I guess from my perspective, the way I was treating it was, I'm adapting this show for an American audience. And, like, so there are going to be people who say that, it's a cultural thing. Why don't you just leave it Japanese? And that's just, that's a valid opinion. We definitely we could have done that, but I just didn't think that doing that was an adaptation. I thought that was more of a translation. And the thing is, if sometimes I've thought in later years when I have time on my hands, which now I got a lot of time on my hands, fortunately or unfortunately, what if it had gone the other way? What if we had taken an American thing and kept it? Yeah, the thing to me was that, I guess, if I was thinking about it at all, this show didn't take place in Japan. It was in a created world, and so to me, I guess, in a way, that having the rice ball being a very Japanese thing. I mean, what is ubiquitous? I don't know. As a hamburger, maybe it is now. Maybe it was that. I don't know, but I can understand their objection to that. I just was trying to adapt it so that a kid, seeing it, would I guess in a way think it's like an American show, or wouldn't think of it being a show, from any particular place. But I can understand their wrath, and I accept the full responsibility of their hatred.
Well, kind of on that note, because actually, in terms of taking a lot more liberties, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mewtwo movie. Which, little quick funny story about that. So you guys worked with this Broadway guy, Jay Goad, as the voice of Mewtwo, who people...
Jay Getty.
Oh, Getty, excuse me. Oh, well, there's a mystery solved.
Jay Getty, he was a talented guy, too.
Yeah, and a little quick funny story about that, because that's a whole other thing I could go on for hours about. But so he used a fake name, no big mystery, it's a thing. And people thought he was dead because there was a guy who was an actor in New York. Yeah, there was an actor in New York that had his fake name that died. And everybody thought, oh my God, the voice of Mewtwo passed away. And then when there was the stage show, the Pokemon Live thing that was on Broadway, where where Andrew Reynolds of now Andrew Reynolds fame was James, which is crazy to think about.
Right.
And Darren Denston, of course, too, is Giovanni in that. And so I guess he used his real name, and it was put in the pamphlet. And like 15, 20 years later, somebody found that, looked him up, and said, "Hey, were you Mewtwo?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've been trying to get my Wikipedia changed for like years, and no one listens." And finally, people are like, "Oh my God, the voice of Mewtwo is alive. He was never gone, or whatever." And that was amazing.
I didn't know that at all. No, Jay was a very talented guy, and I'm trying to remember if he did any Pokemon episodes.
He said that he definitely did the movie. And he did the live show, and I think that he did there was one video game, it was like a puzzle game, that I believe that he came back, because that was like all of you guys, it's like all the gym leaders, and you were Blaine and that and everything too.
Right.
Which I remember Blaine, the Flame gym leader, he was great. I liked him.
Yeah, but let me just hasten to add, because, thinking about this, everybody always thinks everything is due to, well, maybe that's telling me more about me than I would care to say, but, the thing is, there were a lot of people involved. Jim Malone did a lot of these episodes.
Yeah.
We had other writers that would, they would adapt it, and then I would go in and, to their chagrin, or maybe they were happy or didn't care, whatever, would change stuff and whatever, and just because the workload was getting high, we just needed more people, and so. I'm sure their name. If you told me who was writing those early episodes or adapting those, I would say, "Oh yeah, I forgot about him," or whatever. Mm-hmm. A couple of people I know tried it, and they were just like, "This is not for me." Mm-hmm. People would say, "Oh, well, Pokemon," because it was a very hot show at that time. Say, and I needed help, and people would say, "Hey, I'm a writer. Let me try this," and they'd like, "You know what? No thanks,"
right.
Because again, getting back to that, it's a very specific thing. I'm not saying that I had a great talent or anything. It was just like, it was almost like making lace. You did one little stitch at a time, few words at a time, and or a couple of, a scene at a time. Other guys can bang right through it, and to greater or lesser success, and that's great. It wasn't the way I did it, but I wish I could have done it that way, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because this is something I distinctly remember. You guys talked about this a lot in the movie commentaries about. Making changes that, in the mind at the time of like, okay, we want this to be as accessible as possible to an English-speaking audience. And
right.
So especially with the films, there were a lot of things changed. And even later, I forgot about this until just a second ago, but I think the Celebi movie, there was a new scene that was animated for the American version exclusively. Like something was added about like the twist with Professor Oak being the little boy that like is sent back in time and becomes friends with Ash. There's like a new thing that was animated to like tie that together, that kind of thing. And like the Mewtwo movie,
I can't confirm or deny. I can't. I don't remember.
Okay,
it's a vague recollection.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that was something talked about on that commentary. But and then like with the Mewtwo movie, by the way, like Mewtwo Strikes Back, I think is still an excellent movie. Like regardless of it having anything to do with Pokemon, like it's a good film. Like because of just how interesting and like kind of for a kid's animated film, how deep of a character like Mewtwo was with this whole like questioning of who am I, what am I, what is my purpose.
There was a lot of dark. There was a lot of heavy stuff.
And Jay's like very Shakespearean performance on him, which stood out very well. I mean, like for that, and also knowing that it was going to be in theaters, like was there anything different and more exciting or interesting about doing the movies at the time?
We took more time. We did it at an outside studio down with, what's the name of the place? It was way downtown, and we took more time with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had some new characters in there too. Obviously, Mewtwo, mm-hmm. And so and we knew that this was like a big thing, but still at the time it was. It's going to be a movie. Maybe it'll be out. We were just working very hard. Norman and the people at 4Kids were much more aware, I think, and involved certainly in the ramification of what was going on of the success of the show and the ratings and the merchandise that was being sold and the excitement of that. I mean, obviously we saw on, when it was eventually on TV Guide and it was on Time Magazine and all that stuff. I mean, I certainly knew it was a big phenomenon. And when you were on the subway, and you saw kids, playing with the cards and everything. That was a lot of fun. But, we knew it was good, and we took a long time with that. I'm trying to remember if we did a lot of video editing. In later series, I would write into the thing that I need 3 more flaps at the end, or I leave them open at the end. And so we would loop things, which I also know that a lot of people are against, or, understandably, they don't want anything altering the original production of it, even if it's by a few frames or whatever. Or, we would insert a shot where I could see a mouth, or I could mask a mouth so I could match a longer thing, that kind of thing. But I don't know if we did that on the movie. I tend to think we probably didn't, but it's possible. I don't remember. But yeah, and we had, I'm trying to think now. Oh, Carrie was the girl. She was real great too. She had a good.
Carrie Williams.
Carrie Williams, yeah.
And then like Amy, I know Amy Birnbaum was in there.
Amy Birnbaum, yes, yeah. She had a real nice voice too. There were people, and I would meet people, or I remember the people in the elevator. I would hear somebody talking. I said, "Hey, go up and talk to this person who's casting, Darren or whomever." And some people just had a great voice, but they couldn't act. They had people who could act, but just didn't have a voice for it. It was a very specific thing, and yeah.
Well, like Dan Green, for instance. I mean, and I've had the pleasure of meeting. I've had the pleasure of meeting him. He's a wonderful guy and
great guy,
phenomenal actor.
There were hardly any rats.
I would imagine so. Yeah, and it's funny because I forgot about this too. But I mean, Entei, which movie 3 is also excellent with Entei and Molly and Unknown and all that.
For Entei, right?
Yeah, and that was before Yu-Gi-Oh, which it's funny because I mean, to this day people know Dan Green for Yu-Gi-Oh and all that, but like Entei, that was the precursor to that. And then he was such a stay. Oh yeah,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, because actually that would have been right before, because Yu-Gi-Oh was 2001 and movie 3 would have been around the same time. I think it was right around that.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Actually, okay, all right. I know the answer is probably going to be I have no idea, but now that I have you, I need to at least put this out here. Okay, all right. So you guys mentioned, because this is something that fans were like, what happened with that? All right. So there was this whole thing about who's Ash's dad? Where's the dad? There's the mom, but who's the dad? So you guys were doing the Johto stuff, which was the second run around, the second generation worth of stuff, and then there's the Entei movie as part of that. Right. And you guys were talking about, we're working on this season, and we've heard from our partners in Japan that in the following season, Ash's dad is going to be a major character or some major part of the story or something. And 12-year-old me, sorry to date this, 12-year-old me hears that and like, oh, what?
Oh my gosh.
And then nothing came of that. So anything, and I'm sure probably not, but do you remember absolutely anything about that at all?
Absolutely not.
Sadly, no.
Sadly,
okay.
No, I don't. I mean, Norman must have heard from the producers that they were going in that way. Mm-hmm. The thing is, I'm just trying to think, because the Japanese were always ahead of us. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Maybe that. You've never read anything where the creators thought we were doing this and that we were going to do this, and then we changed our mind?
The one thing that has been mentioned like that, and I don't know if you remember this either, there was a thing where they get this weird Pokeball called the GS ball, and they take it with them on like a bunch of different seasons. They give it to different people. Say, can you open this? Like, what is this? Like, what's the deal with this? And then it's like this big mystery. And then they ultimately decided, well, we were going to have that be Celebi, and that was going to be a whole thing in the story. But then we were like, you know what? we think that's too complicated for kids to follow, so let's just do Celebi in a movie, and we'll just hope that the kids forget about the GS ball or whatever. It was very different back then because, like, it was. I think that the thing was when it became such a big international phenomenon, there seemed to be this thing about, like, well, we want it to be as accessible as possible, so let's just keep it very simple and very straightforward and very episodic and not get too complicated. But it's funny because now, the more recent seasons, as I've seen, and some of the ones that I got to work on when I was in New York, now, they're like, no, you know what? We do believe that kids can keep up with an ongoing story. Let's have a more complicated plot. Let's have an arc throughout the course of, a season that might go on for 3 years and have payoffs by the end and characters that come back and, all this stuff, which I think is great because the show has come, it's very different. It is very, very different compared to the stuff that you had done for 8 years. But it's, much like how Pokemon do, it has evolved. To be, I think, a smarter and very different kind of show in its time. And,
let me just put I really, to my recollection, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I worked on the first 3 seasons of the show and the first 4 movies. That's my belief. Does that sound right to you?
Well, 4 kids worked on the first 8 seasons.
4 kids,
yes,
but then
you
I had gone. Then I left Taj because I got hired at 4 Kids to work on
Kirby. I know was a big one, which is big show, and
So I think I can't remember, was Kirby starting when the last movie? I kind of remember an overlap, but that may be false.
Yeah, memory. No, that was like early 2000. Yeah, Kirby, and then I think Sonic X was like shortly after that as well.
That was after that. That's
yeah.
That's right. And then we had F-Zero. I worked on a series called F-Zero.
Underrated show, very underrated show. Love that.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I ever figured out what was going on in the show, even though I was adapting.
I thought it was good. Well, actually, it's funny. One of the first interviews I ever did was with the good Mr. David Wills, who was Captain Falcon in that show. He's an awesome guy. I still hear him.
And he's very funny, and he has a radio show in New York. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Ghosty.
He's a great guy.
Yeah. He was one of the very first voice actor interviews that I ever had on a really old podcast I was on. Super nice guy. I know we're kind of getting close to the hour mark. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but there were a couple more things.
That's fine. That's good. I'm glad to. I'm glad to have you help me remember this.
Well, no, if anything, I mean, because like there's so many people out there that appreciate the stuff that all of you guys did back then, and still, all the old seasons are up on Netflix, and there's all these DVD releases. I think there was a Blu-ray release of like the first season of the show. Everything up everything up until the Pokemon League. That early stuff that just came out very recently, and so many of my friends are, I'm getting that. I want to watch that stuff again.
That really that makes me feel good. I mean, look, I was a very small part of that thing.
Sure.
It was the thing is that show was. It was a good show. They came up with new twists. I would always dread Team Rocket. I would get to the adaptations at like 2:00 in the morning. It's like, oh no, there's another scene after Team Rocket. Oh my God, that's the end. So, but the thing was, and I used to say, I would actually say it in the booth because sometimes we get tired and beat down or whatever. And I say, you know what? This is some kid's favorite show. Mm-hmm. A lot of kids are coming home and they're going to watch this show, and this is the highlight of their day. And I never wanted to dog it. I'm not saying that I did a great job. That's for other people to deny, and plenty do. But and that's fine. I did the best I could on that show. Mm-hmm. But that's what we did. We did the best we could, and the actors virtually all did the best. And we always knew, and I would always say, this is the highlight of some kid's show. We really have to make it. Because I had shows that when I was a kid, I used to watch and really like. And, I wanted to have that, do everything I could to make that experience that good. So if it's to record that line one more time with a little more oomph to it, a little zets it up a little bit, could you take it one little notch higher, just go one energy more or less or whatever it was. And luckily we had a great group of people, and it was just it was like a perfect kind of combination at that time. And I was happy to be, a small part of that, because there were tons of people who were involved with that success. And and I guess the TV helped the game helped the TV. I don't know, but it was just a special thing, and I'll never figure it out. But I'm glad it was. I could tell people I've done stuff, whatever. Whenever you mention Pokemon, that's the Pokemon guy. Like, whoa, that's the thing. And I'm sure that Eric and the other actors would say that too. It was a real special thing, and that's nice. It was a nice thing. There was nothing bad about that show. I never had any, like, oh, this is kind of on the edge. This is a little violent. This is a little distasteful. There was never anything. The original creators, I thought, did a really, really nice job of that kind of show, and they kept it fresh. They added scenarios, and there were always different twists and things, and I think they did a great job. After I haven't seen it after the third season, but my guess is that they're still doing a great job, and it's a special thing, and I'm glad I was connected with it.
Absolutely, God, there's so much I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, anytime.
Let me think of. I just want to use these last few minutes.
Don't leave anything off now. I mean,
sure. Yeah, no. As long as you don't got to go anywhere, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But let me think. Here's something. I know you were still with 4Kids for a long time. Did a lot of stuff. I know that Yu-Gi-Oh. Many of my more recent friends in New York were doing stuff on the newer Yu-Gi-Oh series.
Right.
What are you up to these days? What is a day in the life of Michael Haigney like in 2018?
Well, this is the highlight of my day. So this is great.
Wow.
Well, I worked for a long time, and when 4Kids busted apart, that whole story probably about what happened there.
Well, you know what? Actually, okay. Can I ask about that if you're comfortable with it?
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, now again, I was the guy who was working there. I was a hired hand. I was not privy to a lot of things.
Right.
And, the thing is that from what I know, Pokemon, their contract with 4Kids was up, and they decided, for very understandable reasons, to create Pokemon USA or Pokemon America, or whatever they call it, and take it under their own auspices. Right. And that made sense. I mean, it was unfortunate for us, but it certainly made sense.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, well, here's the thing, because I know it's
public. I mean,
Well, that's the thing is I've heard like 5 different explanations from different people on different sides about why. And, and from the business perspective, yes, I get it completely. I've heard some unsavory and some unfair things about both sides of why. And I'm like, all right, I'm sure there was probably a little bit of both,
I'm not privy to any of that. We were working on shows. I was working at that time, I guess, on maybe Chaotic. We did Chaotic for a couple seasons, and then Tai Chi Chasers. So, I was not privy to that stuff.
Okay. Well, I know that, when it happened, Carter, who was writing, stayed on the show, and then he left 4Kids, and he's been writing the show for the last, I think, like 13, 14 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's been, and since then.
I know he wrote it after me when it was still at 4Kids, when Cass Borland was producing.
Yeah, so he stayed on board as the writer, and now he's been James Meowth and Professor Oak and a bunch of the creatures and stuff for all that time. And
he's a big guy.
And now Tom was directing. Well, no, it was funny because it went back to Taj for a little bit, and Larry was directing it, and that was very short. Then it went to Duart, and Tom Whalen was directing it for a long time. That's when I worked on it. I did about 5 episodes of it, and then more recently now, there's been a couple other people in between, but then now Lisa Ortiz has been doing it. I think the last like 3 or 4 years.
Are they still doing it at Duart?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So Lisa and Carter, I basically are the 2 people that have been on the show since the beginning, which is good. I think it's good to have that kind of level of consistency throughout, and they get it and they care very much about it. And
I'm trying to remember which Lisa was on many episodes. I'm trying to remember.
She didn't have a she was a few of the gym leaders. She was like Sabrina.
Yes, she was. I remember. Yes, gym leaders. Yes, she was. She was doing Lena Inverse at that.
She was. At that time. Super funny. And but yeah,
she's a lovely person too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
she and Tom gave me my first opportunity in voiceover, almost 10 years ago now, and I owe them a lot for that. and Lisa's been taking good care of the show in time.
Oh, good. That's good.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, and the world may never know really why that was. It sucks. It happened. It's showbiz in that kind of sense. I've grown accustomed to that. When you guys did Sonic, you guys were taking over for a previous cast, and then now Sonic has another new cast.
Oh my gosh,
here,
the Sonic thing.
Yeah.
Man, that guy hated me. Yeah.
Oh Lord.
And you know what? I don't blame him. I can understand how he feels. It's just we were doing the show in New York, and it was just a different thing. And I don't want to spark up anything, but
no, I mean, and that's been talked about. Yeah.
I don't have anything against anybody who hated what I did or what 4Kids did. The only thing that I think that was I don't even want to say unfair, because they would have to know what it was. A lot of times 4Kids, I know, especially on a show I never saw, not because I didn't want to see it or whatever. I was just busy with my shows. Was like One Piece or even where they would have to make the cigarette, the lollipop. That was not 4Kids. When they were on broadcast television, those were WB and also Fox broadcast standards. They used to have very stringent things. And the thing is, as you know, basically there's no kids television on broadcast anymore for a number of reasons. But as the years went on, they became stricter and stricter because they just did not want to get the letters from the people saying, how dare, whatever. And I understand those people too. I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying that.
Sure.
That was not a 4Kids. There were some, and I know when we did, oh my gosh, I was just reminded of it because I saw the Thanksgiving Day parade and they had Goku from,
yeah.
Dragon Ball. What was his name? I was too old for Dragon Ball, but, what was the name of the guy,
Mr. Popo. Yeah, I know where you're going with this. Yeah, and that was just because, we're airing it on Saturday morning, and this is a not savory character.
And Fox just said absolutely not, and I can understand them.
Yeah.
And I can understand the fans who said, how can you do this? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just a different Japanese sensibility. I'm not saying it's a great one or a bad one. I have my own personal opinions, but whatever. It's a cultural thing. It had to be changed, and people really vilified and hated 4Kids. I'm sure you know about different things, whatever.
Yeah.
So, and okay, that's what it was. But that's the only thing that I would say. Those were BS and broadcast standards and practices. We had to run all the shows through it. Pokemon had very few things, although there's the one with James. I don't think that was ever aired, was it?
That episode actually was one of the cut ones that was aired later, and that scene was passed over.
It was
very bland. Actually,
there was another one with guns or something.
Yes.
Wasn't there?
And, okay, so I know. I'm sure you won't remember, but I have to ask because people will be screaming.
I kind of remember the gun one.
Well, so the episode, because there was a thing. Remember, there was a joke where Ash had all these Tauros. He had like 1 million Tauros, like a whole stampede of. Yeah. So the episode where there was
like out in the West or
something. There was a whole little
Sheriff
there was a mini like arc where they're looking for the Safari Zone. Oh, we can catch lots of wild Pokemon out there. And mysteriously, in the United States, they never get to the Safari Zone because, as it turns out, the episode where they get to the Safari Zone had a guy who's just, flipping around a 6-shooter at 10-year-olds. And, clearly that's not
right.
going to...
He's holding it right into Ash's face.
Yeah, but
we looked at it, and we didn't want... my recollection was, we would always look at these things like, can we cut around it? Can we blow up a frame? The standard techniques of doing these things.
Yeah.
Blowing up the frame or panning and scanning so that we can eliminate, James's cleavage or something. And I remember vaguely that we just couldn't find a way to do it. There were either too many scenes or the scenes were too integral. And what could we replace it with? It wasn't like One Piece where they could replace a cigarette with a lollipop, no matter how much people liked or hated that.
Well, because there was fans theorized forever because in the Poke Rap there's a shot of Dratini. And they're like, oh, well, then they clearly must have had the footage from that episode because that's the one with Dratini. So maybe they had it and they never did. So so I guess in that sense that's good that you remember. So then I guess were you attempted to see if you could do that one in a acceptable way for BSNP, and it just wasn't.
I'm
quite,
sure we did because we certainly never wanted to drop an episode.
Yeah.
You know, and there was nothing in that for any of us to not air an episode if we could. The thing was, I think there, you know, and we had people a lot of them are still there at 4Kids who would, what we call it rotoscoping, but it's sort of like rotoscoping. It's not exactly that, but it's going frame by frame and either adding something or taking something out. And but I think we just at that point we just thought, I don't think we can do this. I'm not sure we had that department. They had that department at 4Kids at that time, because it was still at Taj at that point, I think.
Yeah.
So we didn't have anything to do with the video, but I remember there was a Western thing, and he was holding a gun on Ash, and then I do remember the thing with James.
Yeah.
And then there was the one that sent the kids to the hospital too.
Yeah, that one I figured was never going to be touched. Like, that was pretty clear.
Yeah. So those were the three that I remember definitely being out. That's my memory of that.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, those were because there were two others that people thought were skipped, but then it turned out, oh no, they were holiday specials, and they were just waiting until Christmas time to show them. They were just kind of aired.
That's right.
They were aired a little bit out of order.
There was a thing, but I'm not sure were those. Yeah, that was a big that was like, oh, what are we going to do with these?
She would Jinx because of the way Jinx looked, and then she got turned.
Oh my gosh,
purple.
Jinx.
Yeah. And then she's purple now, so it's been rectified.
Is that right? Oh,
that's how they kind of got around that ever since then.
Very different sensibility.
Yeah, but here's something funny, by the way. I'm sure you probably had no idea of this, but despite the fact that I know you haven't worked on Pokemon in probably now 15 years.
Well, I think it's
technically, there are people around the world that are still hearing your voice. And here's why. So I know that you guys would, when there would be video games that would actually use the voices of like the Pokemon themselves, like you guys would get to do those. So do you remember there was this one called Super Smash Brothers? Does that sound remotely familiar?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I think, if I'm not, I'm wondering if that was the one that I did the Pokemon voices, the commercial for. Was that the Super?
No. Okay, so Super Smash Brothers wasn't a Pokemon game.
That did all the Nintendo characters.
Yes, that was all the Nintendo characters in a fighting game with each other, and Pikachu and Jigglypuff were in there, and they had an item where you'd throw a Pokeball and a creature would come out and it would make the noise, and it was all of you guys, 4Kids was credited, and blah, blah, blah. So here's the thing. Snorlax was one of the many that you did, probably spur of the moment in an episode, just because.
Yes, but I'll tell you something else about Snorlax.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, no, go ahead. I'm curious.
I think that my recollection is that I did it many times, but I also think that Ted Lewis did it a lot.
Really? Okay.
Whether he did it a lot or not, I don't know.
Okay.
But I think originally he may have done it, and then I took it. I did it because it was like, oh, he's in this one episode or something. You have to ask Ted about that. I think Ted Lewis did some. Okay,
well, either way, there is, because there must have been like, we asked who they were, and then we put them in the credits or whatever, because Snorlax has been in every single Super Smash Brothers game since 1999. There have been 5 of them since 1999. He's been in every single one of them. And literally all he does, you throw a Pokeball, he jumps out, he does a body slam, he goes, Snorlax, and that's it. You are credited in every single game.
Is that right?
Yep.
I've never been paid. I don't think I've ever been paid.
No, well,
for it.
I mean that's what happens. But and even people know this more commonly, but like Rachel hasn't worked on Pokemon in forever, and she was Jigglypuff. They've been recycling her clips as Jigglypuff since the GameCube one.
Another lovely person. Another great person. She was lovely and wonderful. And very talented.
And Jigglypuff was another fan favorite, of course.
Hey, a couple of things that I want to mention.
Oh, sure.
If I do before we go, well, not that I'm saying I got.
Yeah.
2 things. One thing that we did, and Jim Malone was a huge part of this too, and also Eric Stewart.
Yeah.
Anybody remember the Pokemon Christmas album? That was my favorite things to do.
That was exclusive for the U.S. That was just like, hey, let's do this.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. No, people. I know people who have that, and they have the 2BA Master CD with all of.
That was a totally separate thing, but that was the one I was involved with. But also, I'll just say one thing because I said I would. I heard from Tara Sands recently. I'm sure you know Tara.
Oh yeah, she gave me your email actually. So shout out to her.
Okay, right. And she contacted me and Eric recently with a kind of a good idea. I hope, depending. I know that some people are big fans, and she got a bunch of Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander cards together, and we've signed a bunch of them, not tons of them, but a bunch of them, and she is selling those for Christmas on her site, which is on Etsy, and the site name is Looped, Looped, capital LA, Looped LA, all one word, no spaces. So if anybody wants to get a special thing, I've signed very few, occasionally I'll get a request for sign something and I send it right out, over the years that I've done this. But this is a special thing that we just did. We thought it would be kind of a cute Christmas present. Total credit goes to Tara. Yes. And anyway, so that's something that
shout out. I will have a link to that in the description. Major shout out.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Tara, for those of you who don't know, Tara Sands is many things. Of course, she was the original voice of Bulbasaur. She was
she was there at the very beginning.
Many characters. She was Richie. She was Bugsy. She was like all of these different characters from the early days.
And then she's on the West Coast, and she's done a million things since then too.
Yeah, we've worked on a bunch of anime together. She's lovely,
and she's another great person. Lovely, always great, always dependable, and always talented. And
I will have a link to that, absolutely. I guess, you know what, probably just to wrap this up, and I know you've said so much about everything, but I guess, I hope people who have listened to this and have, realized and gotten to know, this person made a lot of these things happen, and, regardless of how small of a part, you were a part that was important.
I was definitely a part, but those actors were a huge part. And the thing is, as I said, the translators and the people who did the editing and our audio engineers and editors and all the people who helped sell the thing. Norman was a huge. Kathy obviously is the producer of the show. And Larry and Jim Malone was a huge part of that. And and of course, Eric and Veronica and Rachel. And I don't want to start naming again, but it's too late. But they were the ones, and it was just a huge phenomenon, and it was just it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of fun, and it was fun to be connected with something that basically everybody knew, And I'm sorry that there were some things that some people really, really didn't like. I really am. For whether I agree with that or not, I feel badly about that. But it was fun, and I certainly did the best I could, I think. And I'm just so glad that people still enjoy it but I will notice the one thing, because now my days are pretty open, but, occasionally I've gone back, really not much, but there was something, I guess maybe on the 20th anniversary, there was something, I guess it was a year or two ago, and I saw something in the paper or on the line. I thought, let me look at this. And people were saying, I love the original one, but at the time it was like, how could they have changed the rice ball? How could they censor this thing? So it's funny how time changes. And so it's still the same show, whatever. I think people just, I think also it's just show that a lot of people have nostalgia for of a certain age that it was the big phenomenon of that time. There really wasn't too much bigger, and that it was something that we were all swept up in, and it was nice to be a part of it, and I'm still glad that I was.
Yeah, and it really says something, because even now. It never went away. It's bigger than ever. It's getting it's getting a Hollywood movie with Ryan Reynolds in it, and
I know that really looks like it's a good idea. I know that Norman had pitched that idea several times, several years ago, and for whatever reason, it eventually happened. But it was a great idea, and people have been waiting for it. It looks like they did a good job. It'd be interesting to see.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the games are still going. The show is never going to end. And I love it all. I'm and having also in a very small part, having gotten to be a part of it with the show, and then with some of the other some of the newer Pokemon stuff that's been out in LA and everything. It's been spectacular.
Well, there's hundreds of people now, I guess, that have been on, involved with.
Yeah, and no, it's so funny because even there was a thing I did. There was like a celebratory thing they did a couple of years ago called Pokemon Generations. It was like this little series of animated shorts that were like clips from the game, and it was so funny because just by total coincidence, a few people that worked on the show back then who live in LA now, got to be on it just by complete happenstance. Like I was in it, Tara was in it, a couple other people, and that was such an amazing full circle because Pokemon was my first voiceover job. It was the very first thing, and I mean, I didn't get to tell you this at the Yu-Gi-Oh thing when we first met. Literally, my first voiceover job with Wayland at Duard, and I did 5 episodes. I got to do all the catchphrases. I fought Team Rocket. I caught a Pokemon. I had a battle with that. I was like 19. Like I was on cloud 9, and now I'm like, this is what I do for a living, and it's insane. And like my God, but no, I truly mean this. Like everything that you and all your partners and your staff and everybody did, entertained me for so much when I was young, and it still holds a very special place in my heart, and it probably had a lot of influence on me in what it is that I do today. So I want to thank you, for whatever small part you consider it to be. I really, really appreciate what you and all your folks did.
Well, that's very nice of you, and I'm sorry. There's so many people that I could mention, Larry Juris and all those other people, and Armin who was in there. And I'm sorry that if I'm leaving someone out who might listen to this, but please know that I forget everything. And but I remember you, and I remember that time. And if you jog my memory, please contact me, or I'd love to hear from you. But I just want to say a big hello to all the people that I work with, and very gratefully thank them for all the times that we had, and of course to all the fans. Thank you. You really were a big part of my life, and I'm very grateful that people still care. And I want to thank you, Chris, for contacting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, of course. This is wonderful. I'd actually been thinking about trying to get you on an interview for a while, and it was actually because of Tara's tweet with the signed cards and stuff that I was like, oh, I should hit him up. I got to make this happen for this year. So, this is coming out, I think, like a couple weeks before Christmas. So hope you all out there are having a very happy holiday season. And regardless of anything, if you celebrate Pokemon Day, for all I care, can people follow you on Twitter? I think you're at Michael Haigney, right?
Is that yes? I'm very rarely there, but please do. Yes, it's at Michael Michael, and last name is Haigney. And you pronounce my name right. You're about one of 3 people in my life who have done it.
It's all because of those commentaries, man. I'm telling you,
including members of my family.
You're of the Haigney family that they can't say, right? Yeah. All right. Well, before we wrap up, there's one more little funny thing. One more little funny thing I want to share you with, and I might have even told you this, but I'll repeat it anyway because it's funny, and you forget everything, so it's okay.
Everything's new to me.
So many years ago, one of my animation projects that I did in my early days of doing stuff on the internet and creating content and cartoons and stuff, I did this parody about a bunch of different Nintendo games, and I had one that was a board meeting where like Pokemon is being pitched. That was like the joke of it, and verbatim, no, not even verbatim, probably word for word, I quoted something that you said on one of those movie commentaries that I thought was the funniest and most accurate thing I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, I'm dying to know what this is.
It was when Norman posed the question of, what is it that you think about Pokemon that has lasted so long? And I thought this would make a great pitch. So I animated I directed the animation. A friend of mine did it. I put it in there and everything. But it was see, it's the Pokemon are sort of like animals, and kids love animals, but they have superpowers, and the kids control them, sort of. So it's like having superpowered animals that you can control, sort of, which would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't you wish you had that?
Oh, Lord.
Someone's going to come up with that. I'm sure someo's working on that.
I mean, listen, for Christ's sake, if you've ever seen Pokemon Go, where like it's got the augmented reality thing, I mean, like,
wow,
they've made it. It's real now. It just is real. It's happened by this point. It just took them 20 years. Oh my God!
Pokemon world we just live in.
We just live in it. As the song goes, we all live in a Pokemon world.
That's Norman's.
And I want to be the greatest master of them all, but I can only do so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Michael, thank you very, very much for being here. This was excellent.
Chris. I wish you happy holidays, and to everybody listening, thank you. And connect with me on Twitter, and I'd love to respond.
Beautiful. And everybody, just last thing for Pokecember, I'll have a review of Pokemon Let's Go next weekend, right before Christmas swings around. Take a look at any of these Pokecember Kirblogs I've been doing as of late. And we will catch you all next time. Fare thee well.
Say,